Coming live from San Diego County, California, USA is our guest this morning. Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Mitch Hankins, founder, the Debug Life, and senior software engineer. Welcome to the show, Mitch.
Thank you so much, AJ. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to having a good chat with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mitch, we will be talking about how to experience a fuller and more connected life. And that's a big thing among so many things that we are facing. So firstly, to understand from you, Mitch, is that people say there are several reasons. Somebody will say social media, somebody will say, some other problem, relationships, and a lot of other issues. What you also talk about several issues. What, in your opinion, is the number one reason that we all feel so disconnected and not able to live the life that we desire or that we deserve?
Well, that's a really good question. And I would say it's rooted in both cultural standards as well as technological developments. On one side, we have society telling us, across the globe in every country, we have society telling us, this is what you're supposed to do. This is how you're supposed to act. This is how you're supposed to look. This is how you're supposed to talk. And the problem is that it's not always best for us. It's not at what's always in our true nature. And when we get told to be a certain way from a young age, we learn that what we truly feel inside of us is wrong. And we get disconnected from that. And we learn to simply project this image of strength and success out into the world. But it isn't rooted in our true desires. And oftentimes we don't really discover or regret those decisions until we're on our deathbeds. And society teaches us these things in all sorts of avenues. It's well-meaning parents, well-meaning adults, sometimes not so well-meaning. It's advertising. It's companies that are trying to market themselves, that know exactly what triggers people and try to get them to buy their products. And therefore they have to create a certain lack, right? They have to make people feel like they're lacking in order for them to want to buy something. And they do that by not making us better people, but by making us feel as if we're missing or if we're somehow not good enough. And there's, of course, also the rise of technology, where we're constantly confronted through social media, for example, with what, the ideal life looks like in terms of wealth, or the ideal body, or the ideal partner, or the ideal vacation, or the ideal home or car. And what we're seeing on these media isn't real life. It's a projection of people showing the best of their lives rather than, the full extent that their true lives. And so we're receiving all these messages that are so incoherent with the truth that we believe that there's something wrong with us. And so instead of embracing life and being excited about it, we live under this fear of scarcity. And we're afraid to reach out and talk about it. We're afraid to talk about it. And that's what causes disconnection.
Right, Mitch. Right. So it means we humans have created a lot of things for whatever purposes, for creating demand, artificial demand, and artificial requirements, scarcity.
Yes.
And then we blame God sometimes for our lives. So it's not right to blame God. It's actually us,
right?
And right. So how do we move out, of this situation? There are so many people. I'll explain it. If an advertising person or anybody in the marketing, or even as a CEO, somebody wants to create demand for products which are not needed for people, or maybe not needed in that much of quantity, and still they do it, and at the end of the day they also feel disconnected. They want to feel better about their lives. Why is it? You are the perpetuator at the same time, and at the same time you want fulfillment in your own life. How will that help? Will that help your children? It will not help. So how does one break that chain? In your case, Mitch, you are a certified full stack developer, and you have worked with Nasdaq, you have worked with the
Yeah.
US military, United States Air Force air traffic controller. There you used to show the way to the planes. Now you are showing way to the right way to the humans, the proud of professionals who are facing this problem in life. So several things, just wanted to put it in front of you, and that so that you can respond at your own pace. Is that how does one can one have a fuller life, a much more connected life, and detaching themselves from the amount of artificiality that they have built up
Mhm.
in their own life, as well as perpetuating, several of them perpetuating it at the same time? Over to you, so that you can look at it from the way you have also traversed this path a difficult way, but now you have actually come to the point where you can show others the way after
Yes.
finding yours.
Yes, absolutely. So I love that. I think the best way for people to really find a way out of that, to find a way, as we call it, the rat race, right? The keeping up with the Joneses, always wanting the nicest things or chasing after things that will make you happy. But once you have them or in pursuit of them, you discover it's not really what you wanted, as is oftentimes the case with wealth. Just look at lottery winners. I think the quickest way out of that is by becoming curious. We're afraid to be alone. We're afraid to be bored. We're afraid to get curious about ourselves, because if we do that, then we know that we have to make changes, and that makes us uncomfortable. And so we kind of, find distractions by doing things, or by taking drugs, or by, and, I'm taking anything, in a drugs category, I'm talking anything from, caffeine, nicotine, alcohol. It doesn't have to be something very, a hard drug, but we're distracting ourselves. Notifications from our phone, constant text, constant calls, constant emails, constant notifications from social media. It's all, in the majority of the cases, it's a distraction. And the way to really get away from the whole rat race is to get curious about yourself and what it is that you truly want in life. A lot of times when you ask people, what do you want in life? They don't really have an answer. They'll tell you, oh, I want to travel, or, oh, I don't really know. I just kind of, see what happens. And that is an answer of someone who's allowing other people to control their lives, whether that be an employer or, a family member or a partner. And the question of, like, what do I want out of life? What makes me happy? And really leaning into that curiosity and building towards that is what will help you get out of that meaningful, or out of that rat race. Because if well, what I really want to do in life is, I'll just make up an example, is to open a store and sell coffee, because I'm passionate about coffee and I love how it makes people feel. And so that's what I want to do. And then when you have that goal in mind, you're not going to be as distracted by a lot of things. Like if somebody is trying to get you an activity that doesn't move you towards your goal, it's easier to say no, because you have some idea of where you want to go in life and what sort of activities matter to you. So it's really getting curious about, really what your body's already telling you. Like if you're uncomfortable in a certain situation, ask yourself, why are you uncomfortable? Is it because people around you are drinking, or because they're talking in a certain way that doesn't resonate with you? Like, just get curious, and you'll find that if you lean into that curiosity, you find out a lot about yourself.
Right, Mitch. Talking of coffee, you also talked about, people are eating the menu rather than the me.
Yes.
And that's the problem.
Yes.
How did you come to thinking about this particular way of looking at things? It's wonderful. Means it
Thank you.
happens every time people go and want to have a good menu, and they will skip a good restaurant which has not a great menu, or they don't present things that way,
Right.
but they have a great meal. That's same with life.
Absolutely. I think it's because we are more comfortable embracing short-term pleasures to delay discomfort, essentially. Like a lot of the choices we make really push discomfort out until tomorrow. Like, let's take the alcohol, for example. of course there's a way to do it responsibly, but if you go out and get drunk really frequently, all you're doing is borrowing happiness from the next day. It's like taking out a loan and you're paying interest on it. Like, it's going to have to get repaid at some point. And then you wake up the next day not feeling so great. And that sounds dramatic, but it could be the last day of your life. If we're framed that way, if you were out to go drinking and somebody said to you like, hey, tomorrow you're going to die, would you still drink, or would you want to go to bed and make tomorrow the best day ever? Right. So we are oftentimes very much pulled to the choices that give us immediate gratification and that we end up paying for in the long term, but we just try not to think about that because, again, that makes us uncomfortable. And we're very good at finding distractions from being uncomfortable. And I think that's kind of the root of the issue with eating the menu rather than the meal. Oftentimes the menu is already there. It's right there. It's ready. The meal you have to wait on. It takes patience. It takes effort to discover. And a lot of the times we haven't put in enough thought to make that worth it. And, just going for the menu is easier. It's just like another example I like to give often is if you're really hungry and your kitchen is empty and somebody comes to your door and they say, hey, I have this unhealthy fast food for you. Would you like to eat it? You're going to say yes. But if you have a fully stocked kitchen full of healthy food and somebody comes to your door and they say, hey, do you want this unhealthy food? You're going to say, no, thank you. I've got a fully stocked kitchen. I don't need you. And that fully stocked kitchen equates to knowledge about yourself, right? And that knowledge ties back into curiosity. That knowledge is discovered through curiosity. So really, eating the menu is not having built or not having discovered enough about yourself to know what it is that you want out of life.
Right, Mitch. Well put. Well put. Now, to understand things, Mitch, is that why do people still continue to live the life that they don't want? They want something else. Why is it like that? Is it that they are not having that courage to say that, listen, I don't want to wear your mask? I think beyond the pandemic that led us to wearing so many masks, I think humans are wearing mask all the time, which is not them. It is something else. So why is it? Is it lack of courage? Why is it that they want to be conformist in wherever they are? Or they think that, okay, at the end of the day, I will be with myself, and that is what I am about. But that is not you will be, because by that time you have made a perception about yourself and you start living that perception even for yourself. Why is it like that?
I think really it is fear. I don't necessarily think the one of the symptoms is a lack of courage, definitely. But I think in life, it isn't that we're afraid of failure as much as it is a fear of what we're capable of. It's a fear of our potential and realizing how big our potential is, and the realization that getting to our potential takes work. And that realization, like knowing like, oh, if I do this thing that I really want, or if I do this really hard thing, again, that makes us uncomfortable because it takes work, and our brains are designed to be lazy because that's how we evolved. That's how the human species became so powerful. Our brains do things automatically, which is the same thing as laziness, and that saves energy. And so we're naturally wired to be lazy, and it takes very conscious effort to go against that, and that makes us uncomfortable. And so that's the reason we're afraid to take off masks. All of us want to be unique. Like, all of us want to be found special. We're all told by our mom or by our parents when we're young that we're special, and we love that. And we still want that as adults. Like, fitting in as conformists is only because we don't want the attention, because that attention reminds us that we're not the person that we truly want to be. So fitting in is easier because the pain of not getting noticed is less than the pain of knowing our potential and yet not moving towards it. Because then we're letting ourselves down, that we're just kind of sleepwalking through life. And so I think that's really the core issue of not letting that mask down, of not taking those steps where it's fear. It's fear of what we can become, knowing how powerful we are as human beings, that there's almost no limits to what our imagination can conjure up, and whatever our imagination can conjure up is possible, with the proper amount of effort and time. And the thing is, once you start getting curious and once you start getting clear about what your mission is or what your purpose in life is, and that can be as simple as owning a coffee shop, or it can be as simple as being a parent. It doesn't have to be like, I want to be the next Gandhi. It can be something that's just important to you. And then all of a sudden, the courage will be there, because courage is nothing more than the willingness to act in spite of the presence of fear. A lot of the times when you see people in movies, they're portrayed as these people, especially movies coming out of Hollywood. They're always like these, quote, badasses that don't have any fear. Well, you know what? They're not badasses because they don't have any fear. Then they're not cool. It's the people that are willing to act, even though they're feeling fear. And that's courage. And when you care about something on a visceral level, on a deep level, like about your child or about a family member, you're willing to do whatever it takes, and the fear doesn't matter. It may be there, but it doesn't matter. And this is the exact same.
Right, Mitch. You talk about, that find the courage to be you, and the community will find you.
Yes.
What is this community and courage and you?
Well, courage is really required, right, in this world, to show up who you like as you are, because if you try something, you're going to get not necessarily laughed at, but you're going to get challenged in some ways. Like, you're going to get people telling you, like, are you sure? Like, there may be a safer route. Like, why not play it safe? Like, don't do that. Just like be normal, try to fit in, because, it's from well-meaning people, because that way they think that our harm in life will be less. But of course, that's not the truth. Like, if we want to be great, if we want to fill into our potential, then we have to find the courage to be ourselves. And to be ourselves requires a lot of curiosity again, right? So, and that builds courage. So once you have the curiosity to discover about yourself and the courage to be yourself, and you can show up as yourself, in public and with friends and with people, and it doesn't really matter what other people think, because you're clear on what you want to do, then you're going to start attracting the right people, and the people that tell you it cannot be done, it shouldn't be done, or that work against you, you start realizing that it's a choice to be with those people. And you start realizing that you don't owe them anything, and that you can surround yourself with the people that support you. And the more strongly you proclaim to the world who you are and what you're there for, the more you'll attract the people that support you, for better and good. Of course, there's good and bad examples of that in the world. And the idea behind find the courage to be you and community will find you is that if you are a conformist and if you pretend to be someone you're not, then you're going to have a community around someone, around a person around you that doesn't really know who you are, and you don't have the same connection with them. But if you show up in the world fully as the person that you are, and you start attracting the right people because they see how you act and they see how you live, and that fascinates them, that creates a bond between you. It's going to draw them towards you, and it's going to create meaningful connections, and it'll build community, and it'll build a community that is based on more than simply people feeling lonely and wanting to have people around them. It's based on common ideology and common ideas and common conversation and interest. And that's what community is really all about, because that's when you can support each other and love each other and help each other through the difficult periods of life, as well as the enjoyable, excitable moments.
Right. And where do you find this community? Is it the Facebook community you are talking about, a LinkedIn community group?
Sure.
Where is this community? Where does one find that?
It can really be anywhere. I think if you, personal communities are always going to have more of an impact on people, but it may be hard if somebody is in a different city, or if somebody, is hard to reach. So online is, of course, always an option. Although, when it comes to the people that you see on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, the people that you see in real life are going to have the biggest impact on you. There's a very famous saying which goes, you are the average of the 5 people you spent the most time with, which is very true. And so the way to find this community is just by being curious and paying attention. So being curious about what do I like? And I'll give you an example. Like if I ask myself right now, what do I like? I could be like, well, I really like to play soccer. And then I can say, well, let me go find a soccer club. And then I go to the soccer club. And then if I show up as the person that I truly am, I start attracting the right people there. And I will start doing that at various places I go, and I can bring those people together. And that is how you create community. It's just by showing up in places that you want to show up, doing things that you want to be doing, and connecting with the people that resonate with you. And you'll just notice kind of this magnetic pull almost working, where you're pulling the right people towards you just by saying and doing the things you love.
Right, Mitch. Now, talking of, as you said, humans have a lot of potential, and then many of them are fearful of what they can become. And that is why they continue to live an average life. They continue to not have that courage to have curiosity. And several of them, perhaps they learned about that curiosity killed the cat. So let's not have curiosity, or lest we be killed. But my question here is, Mitch, is that if people are fearful of taking that big leap, or the leap of faith, that to achieve what they can actually become, and that is why they are not taking it and perhaps living in the in the cave of their own minds. But at the same time, there is this problem of imposter syndrome. When you achieve something that you so much deserve and you have that capacity, then you are again having this problem of imposter syndrome. So both ways you are gone. Earlier it did not happen. Nowadays it's happening too much. Why is it so? Why are even capable people who have achieved with all that sweat and blood and hard work of their lives still continue to be beset with this thing called the imposter syndrome?
Well, again, I think that has to do a lot with cultural programming. Imposter syndrome is something I've dealt with a lot as a programmer. I dealt with it probably the first 5 to 8 years, years of my software developer career, even as a senior developer, where you're surrounded by all these people using big words and talking about complicated things. And that's just part of the culture. And they know they went through that too when they were younger, and they had imposter syndrome. And yet they don't really tend to, as Einstein said, if you can't explain something simply, then you don't understand it yourself. So that, for one, is within the software engineering world, is a big thing where people have something to prove. It comes from the ego, where they're not willing to really simplify things because they had to go through it. So they kind of perpetuate that onto the next people. And in a more general sense, imposter syndrome occurs because of that fear of who we can become, and really how we're perceived. And if we are more concerned with how we're perceived, and instead of the work that we're doing, then that's really where imposter syndrome kicks in, because we're going to be thinking, oh, am I doing a good enough job? Oh, somebody else is better at this, and I'm going to get found out as a fraud at any point in time. And all that has to do with, all that's rooted in, is our fear of how people see us. So obviously, if we were just concerned with our job or with our, whatever our task is, then, and we weren't worried about other people's opinions, then imposter syndrome wouldn't even exist. It's entirely a fear based on other people's opinion. And that happens because we're social creatures. During our hunter-gatherer time period as a human species, if you weren't approved of, or you weren't useful, or you were somehow ousted from the tribe, then you weren't going to survive. You were going to die. So it's very strongly encoded in our genes to want to fit in, to want to be approved of, because our body, our minds directly relates that to our chances of survival. So really, imposter syndrome is rooted in a sense of survival, and that's why it can trigger so much of our flight and fight response and give us so much of a panic. And again, it's brought on by cultural expectations of never feeling feelings of inadequate, inadequateness, because all around us we're told like, oh, you're not good at this, you're not good enough at that, you're not good enough, you're not good enough looking in such and such way. And that's really the program we've received all our life. So we've been taught, well, the opinions of others are important, and we take that into our professional and personal lives, and we prioritize those opinions above the results of our work. And that is really how imposter syndrome is created and how it's manifested. And it's so important to realize that it's not a unique thing, to anyone listening. It's not unusual to feel that. It's a very natural thing. It's just as natural as breathing, because it's a survival mechanism. And I've also mentioned how it manifests and how it will show up in your life. And anybody will encounter this at some point in their life, whether it's at work or as a parent or in any other capacity. And really the only way to get over it is to just focus on getting better, on learning your task. If you're a programmer, it's learning how to program better and learning from feedback. If you're a parent, it's just about focusing on the results and the time you spend with your children. And if you notice yourself thinking about what other people think, you can't stop that, but you can choose how you respond to those thoughts. So try and notice, try and grow an awareness of these thoughts you're having, and trying to take a distance from it. A lot of it is really about mindfulness. So realizing how common this whole thing is, you're not alone, and learning to take distance from those thoughts.
So, how did you deal with your own thoughts about this and come out of it? Now that you are helping others, and you have this, you are the founder of the Debug Life. You do tell us about that too.
Yeah, I would love to. So again, as I said, I struggled a lot with imposter syndrome myself, to the point where, this sounds a little cliche, but I would sometimes just go to the bathroom, just hold my head in my hands and just cry, because I was just like, I feel under so much pressure. I felt like I was getting crushed at the bottom of the ocean. And I, at some point, just recognized that it was enough. There was this one night where I had just flown out to San Francisco. I was living in Denver at the time, and I just flown out to San Francisco to get a job, to do a job interview. And I was so worried about, like, how did I do? What did they think? I had like 5 rounds of interviews with them. So, and then I just realized there in bed, I realized that I was having a panic attack. And it was kind of at that point where my journey started, of realizing how all of this anxiety and fear was manifesting in my body, and what it was costing me because of the lack of friendships and the lack of intimate relationships and the lack of fun I had in life. And that's when I said, this can't control me anymore, and I need to get an awareness around it. So I started setting boundaries, and I started saying, well, I am going to get really good at what I do at work, and when I'm home, I'm home. And if I can't help my mind from forcing me to think about work, but I won't entertain those thoughts, I won't let them snowball. And that's a habit that I did every day. It's not a fix where you take a pill and the next way you wake up and the imposter syndrome is gone. It's practicing every single day to create an awareness about your thought. It's just like meditation, it's growing an awareness, and it's a daily habit, and you get a little better at it every single day. And that's what I did. And then I started to learn that everybody, at that point I started seeing that a lot of people had this problem. And I started seeing, especially engineering guys and software engineers, I started seeing like how unbalanced their lives were, where they were very well professionally developed, they were making good money, but they didn't have a fantastic personal life because they were over analytical, or they had too much anxiety, social anxiety, to really show up in their personal life as the person that they truly are. And then I thought, well, we don't live to work, we live to enjoy life. And that's when I kind of pivoted to thinking, well, I don't enjoy working my life away. So what can I do to express my gift to the world? Like, what can I do to make other people's life better? And then I thought, well, what I can do is speak up about these issues, speak up about the anxiety, the depression that men have, because that's not often talked about, especially not in modern day culture. We're not really invited to talk about those things. So
Right.
I founded the Debug Life. Just as you debug code, you have to debug your life. The curiosity is really debugging. It's the same with a program. Like, why is this bug here? Why isn't this working? What's curiosity? And it's the same with our life. Like, why am I not happy about this? Why is this hurting or that, giving me a certain pain? You get curious and you debug it and you build a more meaningful life. And that's what the Debug Life is all about.
Right. And who is this for? Who can connect with you for, help or any sort of understanding these things better? Who is the right person for this?
So the right person to do this is anyone that feels as if there is a lack in their life, like they're missing something and they can't quite put their finger on it. They may have certain areas in life they're really happy with, but they're lacking in other areas like health or finance or romance or professional, where they just feel, I don't have things fully aligned for me in life. And they can find me at thedebuglife.com, where I blog about these subjects. And I really talk about, a wide variety of things, like how to deal with mental health and how to eat right and how to sleep right and how to exercise and how to find the things we've talked about in this conversation, like how to find the communities where you can really embrace yourself and where you can find, places to build that community. I also am on social media on Instagram as the Debug Life, where I kind of show like just what my life looks like and what I've created, just kind of be living proof of what I preach. Right. And, it's like I said, it's really just for anyone who just wants to create a more meaningful life. Anybody that feels like they're maybe sleepwalking through life and want to wake up.
Okay. Want to wake up. But there is a lot of this talk of woke culture and this wake up. How do you differentiate between that? I'm just joking on that. But at the same time, there has to be some understanding of it's like the same difference between, solitude and loneliness. So I wanted to actually come to that solitude and loneliness. A lot of people want to be in solitude. I like a lot of, time to spend with myself. But then the loneliness is also a big issue. So
Yes.
how do you look at this? How does one know that he's actually not lonely, but actually his mind and body wants a bit of solitude, which is
Yeah.
it's like emotionally self-regulating. That part is also it's very important that someone like you can throw some light on.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. I think a lot of times when we see someone in solitude, often we're quick to label them as lonely. But there's a critical difference between solitude and lonely, where we can be lonely even if we're surrounded by other people. We've all been in a room where, we felt like we connected with one and felt completely and utterly lonely. So they're very different concepts. Where lonely is really the feeling of not being connected and the feeling of being isolated, the feeling of being alone. Whereas solitude is simply the state of being physically alone. There's no one around you, but you can feel completely connected. You can feel very loved, and you can feel as if, once you get out of that solitude, you have people to come back to. And of course, loneliness is not a great place to be, because it's, our mind telling us you need people around you. You need connection. You need love. You need to have people around you. Because it makes us feel safe. It makes us feel good. It makes life worth living. Life isn't worth, like, nothing in life is worth experiencing if you do it alone, because that's just not how we evolved. Versus a solitude is really, I consider it my superpower. Like, if you can go into solitude without feelings of loneliness, it gives you that space to get curious. We talked a lot about curiosity. But how can you answer these deep, meaningful questions? Like, what do I want out of life? If you're constantly being distracted by people around you, if you have all these distractions on your phone or the TV or all these noises around you, the solitude is a way for you to get into a quiet space where you have time to think. Bill Gates does it, for example, where he goes to a cabin for a week. He takes no technology with him whatsoever. The cabin doesn't have internet, and he just takes his books and he just thinks. And J.K. Rowling does the same thing with writing her Harry Potter books. She goes and she booked into a resort, completely isolated herself, didn't see anyone. and she wrote her books. And that's, and then when you're in that solitude, you can find those answers. You can actually focus because you're not being distracted. And then you can come back into the world with a lot more meaning and with a lot more to give and a lot more you to show to the world.
Right. A lot more meaning and a lot to give. Now, to understand from you, Mitch, is that you have come out of this. Now you are adding more meaning to the life. Very quickly, how can people, anybody who is listening to this show, watching this show, immediately, if they want to understand if they are living a fulfilled life or not, how they can do it in just a few questions that they can ask themselves?
Well, really, the main question to ask yourself is, am I happy? If you're happy, you're going to know. Are you happy, for a few hours, or have you been happy for a long time? Another way to look at it is, do you feel like life is mostly suffering, or do you feel like life is mostly joy? And another way to look at it as well is, do you feel like you have a purpose in life, like you're working towards something, like your life has meaning? And if all those answers are certain for you, then you kind of already know. Like, people that are truly happy, they know. But if you feel a lack, if you feel a certain emptiness, and it tends to show up in a pattern, then there's probably some self-work that there's left to do.
Okay. And now, how do you look at your own life? Are you happy? If somebody asks you.
Yes, absolutely. I am very happy, since I've made this transition, especially to the debug life. Like, at first, I would get out of bed thinking, oh, I have to go work for someone else. And, Monday through Friday, I'm just spending it, working the whole day away, like doing something for somebody else. And some people can be happy like that, but I wasn't. And I felt, as I said earlier, I felt a lack. I felt like I was missing something. And when I started the debug life, all of a sudden I started talking to people who said, like, hey, what you're saying made an impact on me or changed my life in some way. So now I can say I'm genuinely happy because I can have conversations such as these. And these conversations are what make me happy, what set me on fire, because that's what, for me, expressing my gift to the world is. And what for me is my life having meaning, because I can have conversations that to me truly matter.
Right. And where does the happy you want to go from here?
So the happy me wants to go to, honestly, where I already am. I don't necessarily see a grand goal in mind. I just want more of what I already have. In the end, it's good to work towards something, but for me, it's really more of what I already have.
Wonderful. It's everyone can be in a constant state of where they are, and if they are happy, that's the best. That's the best way to be, and
Yes,
you don't need to go anywhere else beyond that. Perfectly
absolutely.
all right. Thank you so much, Mitch, for coming on to the show. On this note, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live.
Thank you for having me.